Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Leone. I'm the Executive Director of the New York State Brewers Association. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge some of the folks that are here today. Chairman Vincent Bradley with the State Liquor Authority. Commissioner Richard Ball, New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets. Dan Nothnagel, co-founder, Three Heads Brewing Company. Jeff Dale, co-founder, Three Heads Brewing Company. Todd Durigal, co-founder, Three Heads Brewing Company. Mayor Lovely Warren, City of Rochester. Bill Maley, Supervisor, Town of Brighton. David Seeley, Supervisor, Town of Arundecoit. And Molly Clifford, Council Member, Rochester City Council. I just want to briefly say that when I started this job 3 years ago, there were only 90 breweries in New York State. And today, there are over 240, with 40 more in planning. The brewing industry in New York State has a $4 billion economic impact, which ranks us fourth in the country. But it's not about just the beer, it's also about the wine, cider, spirits, and all of the industries which are thriving today. We're all working together to create jobs and to drive tourism throughout the state. All of this tremendous growth wouldn't be possible without the support of Governor Cuomo and his administration. The administration has provided millions of dollars in research and grant support and helped eliminate a lot of the red tape that has slowed growth in the past and really allowed this beautiful brewery to happen. Also, I want to acknowledge Taste New York. It's a great program that's exposed all of our products to millions of people throughout the state and throughout the country and throughout the world. The craft beverage industry in New York is producing some of the best beer, wine, cider, and spirits in the world. And right now, there is no better time to think New York and drink New York. But there is still some work to do. So with that said, I'd like to introduce the chairman of the State Liquor Authority, Vince Bradley.
Thank you, Paul. As the chairman of the State Liquor Authority, I have a unique perspective on change in the beverage industry. Following countless, Governor Cuomo's goal, I should say, from day one was to unlock economic potential by working collaboratively with producers and sellers. As Paul said, our progress has been remarkable, and the numbers speak for themselves, but there's more work to do. The fact is, New York continues to operate using an 80-year-old statute, the Alcoholic Beverage Control Law. It seems that much of the law was written during the Prohibition era, and that's why this fall, Governor Cuomo announced a working group to modernize the law. Following countless hours of meetings with producers, retailers, and community groups, the working group delivered a series of recommendations to the governor this spring. Today, I'm proud to announce that Governor Cuomo will advance these recommendations in legislation to safely and responsibly modernize New York State's alcoholic beverage control laws. Some of these changes are, for the first time since 1934, the legislation will allow restaurants to serve consumers before noon on Sundays. And turning around an 80-year-old law, the legislation will provide the State Liquor Authority with the discretion in certain circumstances to consider applications for restaurants that are within 200 feet of a church or a school. This legislation also will combine multiple craft manufacturing licenses at one location into one application instead of separate applications. This will ensure that the winery or the brewery that wants to produce whiskey isn't bogged down by unnecessary paperwork, particularly during the renewal process. And it also allows customers to take home partially finished bottles of wine from a winery that they may have purchased while they were visiting. And finally, it permits wineries to sell wine in growlers, which are illegal at this point in the state of New York, and is legal for breweries to do. Governor, on behalf of the working group, I want to thank you for accepting these recommendations, and I look forward to helping make sure this legislation gets passed. It is now my pleasure to introduce a man who is a new member of the craft beverage industry to share his story with you. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dan Nothnagel, co-founder of future Three Heads Brewery.
Thank you, Chairman Bradley. Before I begin, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank everybody for coming here to welcome us into our new space. Really, we're here to serve the public, the community. We want to be a good team member, good member of the New York State Craft Brewers Association, a great Rochester business. We're all proud Rochesterians. We'd like to call them Rochestafarians here. And it's just a true joy to be standing here in front of all of you. There's a few other people. There's so many people we could thank that helped make this possible. But the developer, the guy who actually built this building and everything here is here with us, Frank and Bergia. I don't know where he is, but hey, thank you so much. Next to him is Carlo Calea, who has run all the electrical work here. So thanks to you for coming. And as beautiful as the building looks, we want it to really fit in with the character of the neighborhood and to be a great building. Our architects are here, Al Party from Party Associates and Jenna Lettenberger. They were amazing. I told the governor back there, and truly, without the initiatives that he helped pass with the Craft Beverage Act, we probably wouldn't be standing here today. A lot of the red tape and a lot of the abilities for us to have people come into our tasting room and buy beer by the glass was only possible by the legislation that's been passed and that will be future passed. So honestly, it's a real thrill for us to have you in this room, and I can't thank you enough. So this Craft Beer Act is working. This is proof of that. There's a lot more growth with the hop growers, the malt growers, so the industry in New York State is a boom. And just like Paul mentioned, we're putting New York on the map. And not only is it working, but this is going to be a great magnet for tourism to Rochester. So people will come here from all over to sample our beers and hang out and have a great time. And I'd like everybody to know that when we open, we'll probably have about 15 new jobs that didn't exist before today. So thank you very much. So on behalf of all of us here at Three Heads Brewing, the fellow brewers that I know are here. There's distillers, cider makers here as well. And across New York State, I want to thank you so much for supporting our industry. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome the 56th Governor of New York State, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Well, it's my pleasure to be back in Rochester today. I'm an honorary Rochestafarian, I guess you could call me. To Dan and to Jeff and to Todd, let's give them a round of applause for pursuing a dream and making that dream come true. This is really, really exciting. And your story is really exciting. How quickly you went from just an idea to a vision, and then you had the courage to go for it. So really, we all admire you. We all wish you well. And it feels right. And I think you're going to be a great success. One more round of applause for Three Heads. I do have one question. Who is the model on this box, I'm wondering? You think? Did they tell you they were doing that? No. To Mayor Lovely Warren, who's doing a great job leading this city. Mayor, it's a pleasure to be with you. Let's give her a round of applause. To our new supervisor, Dan Seeley, congratulations. I haven't had a chance. To Paul Leone, who's doing a great job with the industry. Thank you very much, Paul. We have Commissioner Richard Ball, who's the Commissioner of Agriculture, and Chairman Vince Bradley, who's the Chairman of the State Liquor Authority. They've been working very hard on the proposals that we're unveiling today to change the state liquor law. Change is very, very hard. Change is hard in your own personal life, and the bigger the societal collective, the harder it gets. To go through what they went through to change these laws, to bring change to Albany is a tremendous undertaking, and I thank them so much for the good work they did. Chairman Bradley, Commissioner Richard Ball, let's give them a round of applause. You know, life is perspective. We're in this facility. If I asked most of you what's the first four-letter word that comes to mind, you'd probably say beer. If you ask me what's the first four-letter word that comes to mind, I say jobs. I say beer second, but I say jobs first, because the focus for me and the focus for the administration has been on the economy, primarily on the upstate economy. If this state has had a long-term problem that went unrealized and unaddressed, it was the problem of the upstate economy. Downstate economy, frankly, has been doing great. New York City, all the numbers have been up in New York City for the past 2 decades. But upstate New York had the exact opposite situation. Upstate New York was losing jobs, losing people, and was not getting the attention that it needed to deal with those issues. And my focus has been to turn a total 180 with state government. Make the upstate economy work, make it work better than it's ever worked. We'll make the entire state stronger, and it's possible. It just takes time, attention, and it takes investment. During that same period of time that upstate was going down, New York City was going up, Albany, the District of Albany, did very, very well because the state invested billions of dollars in new high-tech companies in Albany, but really ignored the rest of upstate New York. So for me, it's about the upstate economy and that focus. And when you think about the upstate economy and bringing back the upstate economy, you try to do it with big projects, big jobs, big employers, photonics, et cetera, these big moves that are going to bring in hundreds of jobs. But in truth, that's not the way the economy works anymore. You're not going to replace the void left by Kodak by bringing in a new Kodak. There is no new Kodak. There is no employer with thousands of jobs. The economy now is all about small business and creating hundreds of small businesses to fill the void where you had one big business before. It's where we are today. It's entrepreneurs who have courage, have vision, and make an investment, $4 million, and create 15 jobs. This is the economy. This is the new economy. This type of venture is the new economy. And we have to be oriented towards assisting this type of venture. And that's exactly what we're doing. We have invested very heavily in the wine, beer, and spirits industry. We have then combined that industry with the tourism industry, which is one of the strongest economic engines for upstate New York. When people see upstate New York, they are blown away. All we have to do is get them to come. You get them to come once, they will come back. We just have to get them to come once. That's advertising, those are special events, that's the I Love New York campaign. But those two industries have a synergy between them that is dynamite. They're going to make great beer here. Well, I shouldn't say that yet. I haven't tasted your beer. And I'm a governor, and I want to make sure what I say is right. So I'll make that decision after the tasting. But they're going to make beer here, at least in great cartons, right? That we know for sure. And this can also be a cool tourism facility. People would want to come in here, see how it's made. It's brand new, looks cool. So the synergy between the wine beer industry and the tourism industry, both of them have been rockets for us. The wine and beer industry, when you look at wine, beer, and cideries, we are now at 1,000 in the state of New York. Close to 1,000, a $27 billion industry. I mean, just imagine that growth. A few years ago, it was Finger Lakes wine and some wine on Long Island, right? Those are primary, that was our wine, beer, cidery industry. Now we have over 1,000, $27 billion. We invested in tourism very heavily. State invested $60 million in tourism. The revenues in tourism went up $4 billion with that $60 million investment. If we get that return on our money, I will do that every day of the week. So we have a tourism rocket. We have a wine, beer, cideries rocket. We're combining them to get a synergy, and it's working, especially in upstate New York. Today, we want to take the next step. What is the next step? Too often, government is more of a hindrance than a help, which is the exact wrong place that government should be. Government has this attitude, well, I should be the regulator of business. Yes, to an extent. You want to make sure workers are safe, et cetera. But you also want to be a facilitator of business. You want to be an expediter of business. I have a concept I call entrepreneurial government. I want to make our government an entrepreneurial government. People say, oh, no, you can't do that. That's an oxymoron, entrepreneurial government. I say, why is it an oxymoron? Well, government is not entrepreneurial. Why not? Why not? Why does government have to be this slow, bureaucratic impediment? Entrepreneurial government. You have an idea, you want to start a wine or a beer distillery, we want to be with you. What do you need? How do we help? And certainly, how do we remove the obstacles? A tremendous obstacle to the wine, beer, cidery industry has been the state law, what they call the ABC law, Alcohol Beverage Control Law. The law was created 80 years ago, right after Prohibition. And that's when the law was written. It is the most bizarre, arcane, frustrating, maddening law that you could imagine. It has all these categories that are just designed from decades and decades ago that now stifle the industry, and especially stifle the new industry, which really doesn't fit within the old boxes anymore. And this law has been impossible. Past few years, we've been tinkering around the edges, trying to change this, trying to change this, trying to change this. Last year, we got together and we had a wine beer summit, and we said, you know what, let's just throw out the whole law. And let's start over with a blank piece of paper, because trying to fix this law is more work than writing a new law. Sometimes it's easier to tear down the house than try to rebuild the house. But the law was really frustrating all types of creative energy. If you had a winery, you couldn't sell beer, you couldn't sell whiskey. If you sold whiskey, you couldn't sell beer, you couldn't sell wine. If you didn't sell food, you couldn't sell this. I mean, it was a crazy hodgepodge. You had to have a wall between where you sold the wine and where you sold the beer, you know. Literally all from the 1930s and 1940s. We have, by this task force report, dramatically redone that law. I think it will unleash even more entrepreneurial activity, more job generation, more facilities like the one we're in today, because we want to make it easier. You tell me what you think you can sell here, what can generate income, what can bring tourists in the door, and that is exactly what we want to do. We have made great progress on the numbers. New York State now has more private sector jobs than ever before in the history of the state of New York. Just think about that. And you feel the energy changing. You can feel more of a positive energy in upstate New York than we felt before. You know, you have more people now talking about the future as opposed to just the past. Upstate New York, it was always, well, we were this. Everything was in the retrospective. We used to do this. We were this. My father did this. My grandfather did this. And there wasn't enough about tomorrow and the future and where we're headed. Now you feel a change in that culture. Young people are moving back. Young people are moving back to downtown areas. People are investing, and they feel a future and an economic future in upstate New York. And it is literally going to be industry by industry and changing the attitude of government. So we are an active partner in entrepreneurial government. Tell us what you need. Let us help you grow your business. We want you to do well. And if you do well, you're creating jobs. That's opportunity, and the state does well. That's the road we're on. We've made great progress with this industry. The legislature should pass this reorganization bill. There's about 5 weeks left for the legislature. We passed a great budget for the state. We passed it virtually on time. It did a lot of good work. But there's more work to be done in Albany. This is one of the bills that has to be taken up. These laws should have been reformed 80 years ago. They should definitely be reformed this year. There is no excuse for the legislature to leave Albany without changing this law. We know the potential in this industry. We know how great it can grow. We know the good things it's doing. Let's unleash even more entrepreneurial energy by passing legislation reforming these alcohol beverage control laws. It is good for everyone. Thank you, and God bless you.